in today. Thanks for taking the time. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
So we just have one more speaker left today, guys. It's going to be us and Dustin for the last little bit of your guys' day. So our next speaker, as I said, is Dustin Thomas. He's an Air Force veteran, national security innovator, and deployment strategist at Palantir. He's worked across the Defense Innovation Board and in the Air Force, and he's a huge advocate for helping veterans transition into meaningful roles. Speaking of that, Dustin, can you start us today about telling us how your transition went and how that was for you?
Yeah, I would love to. I would start off by saying not well and not well planned at all either. But like to dive into that and just talk through. It was COVID. Let me kind of back up a little bit, and I'll just kind of talk through like how I guess how I got to Palantir and some of the things that I hit along the way. Does that work?
Yeah, yeah, no, that sounds
Okay,
amazing.
cool. Yeah, yeah. So we'll definitely cover the transition spiel too. But so like I said, working at Palantir now as a deployment strategist, only believe a little bit of what you hear out there about us. It's an incredible company. Been here, it will be 4 years in April. I've absolutely loved it. Some of the hobbies I have, right? Mentoring veterans, taking calls. I try to reply to everyone on LinkedIn and just dispelling a lot of beliefs that you hear in your transition process about like what it actually looks like and things like that. One of the you mentioned, hey, what was the transition process for me like? And it was I went to Taps. We had a dinosaur, I think she might have been 103 years old, that was telling all of us, like, hey, you need to have a 12-page federal resume. And everything she was saying, I already had an offer letter in hand when I went to Taps. And it was hard to stomach the rest of, I think it was maybe a 2 week, maybe a 1 week process at that time, but didn't get a lot of value out of it. Transitioned during, what I thought would be a brief bit of COVID. I think it was like January 2020. Um, Packed everything, sold my truck. I was in the Air Force. I was in Texas at Dyess Air Force Base. Sold it my truck, sold everything. Took a one-way U-Haul up to DC to start a job at Accenture, federal at the time, and they called me about 3 weeks after I got here. I was living in a little shoebox, expensive apartment in Rosslyn, just a few blocks from the building. And they called and said, hey, you've signed an offer. Everything's great. But due to COVID, we need to bump back your start date by like 6 months. And you can just imagine, like, my first time, I was like, I'm an idiot. I should have never left the Air Force. Like, what was I thinking? But that was, in a nutshell, that was like my transition experience. The other thing, as far as dispelling beliefs, I want to hit on was I had an offer about 5 months out of my separation date. I actually got the offer, and then I had to hit the separation button. I was very concerned and kind of scared about getting out without having that backup plan in place. I think that's very abnormal, but it was something that I was. Had a wife. She was at the FBI at the time, and we couldn't get the DoD and the DOJ to really talk to each other to line up careers. And I feel like everyone's always having to make a sacrifice when you have two ambitious people in the military and government, and it's hard to line those up. So we knew, push came to shove, we had to separate and link back up in Washington D.C. So that's what we did. But COVID happened. Um, Happy to keep talking about that story. I mean, it obviously doesn't end with, deferment of employment from Accenture. But are there any other opening questions? If not, I'll keep carrying on the story from there.
Yeah, no, I would love to hear where that story goes. I'm curious what you did after for that 6 months.
Yeah. So, uh, absolutely devastated. Like I said, was in DC for like 3 weeks. Got the letter, said can't start you for 6 months. Um, I knew what I needed to do. I got back on LinkedIn. It was a bunch of cold messaging people. It was doing things all of the wrong way, which I get messages all the time like this, but it's like, hey, look at my resume. Hey, you know, this is what happened in my situation. And it was really, like, looking back on it, kind of transactional. And I never meant for it to be that way, right? It wasn't that it was like, I'm in freak out mode. I don't know what to do, but this is my situation. I was very fortunate. Had a few guys pick up the phone. I was talking to one guy and he was like, small boutique consultancy here in DC. And he was like, well, man, what do you want to do, Dustin? And I was like, dude, I will do anything. I will mop floors. Like, I don't care. Right now, I don't have any options, but like the first job offer that comes my way, I'll sign. Like, let me know. But I couldn't say that. And he
Yeah.
he was like, oh, I didn't really know what to say, and he was like, well, what do you like to do? And I was like, well, in the year, my best days were cutting red tape for um, like our guys for any squadron we were in. Anytime we could cut the red tape for people and help people to get the job done, those were like some of the best days I had. And he kind of chuckled and he was like, "Oh, so like innovation? You like innovation?" And I was like, "Oh, well, not. I don't know if I'd call it that." I was like, "Really? Like innovation was just something we would throw a label on if we needed like more squadron funds or something." But well, sure, yeah, innovation. Well, the very next day I had no plan to talk about this detail, but happy to share this too as I'm remembering it. I he said he calls me back later that night. He goes, "Hey, can you take an interview tomorrow?" It's like, yeah, that'd be great. And he was like, "Okay, great." And so this was like a small little consulting firm. And the next day I have the interview. I log onto the call and three people are they send me the names of the people and look them all up, and I was just super intimidated because I could see like Harvard graduate school, Georgetown master's degree, like all this stuff, and I was just super intimidated at the time. I remember I was like, oh, I'm not qualified for this. I don't know what the outcome's going to be, but we'll see. And one of the first questions, like out of the gate, they go, "Hey Dustin, like why are you applying for the Defense Innovation Board?" And I just remember stopping in my tracks and being like, the what? Like, that's not the name of this company. That's not the name of this. I had no idea how like um consulting, like contracting worked, right? Like we were contractors for another project out of the Pentagon, but had no clue. So everyone on this call is miles ahead of where I was at during my transition experience that went really, organized very poorly by me. But it was just really funny to like sit there and think I was like the Defense Innovation Board, like never heard of that. But I think I know how I got here. The guy had asked me like what I wanted to do, and I said cut red tape. Like it was a very rough start to my interview. Things went well. So from the time that I got the letter from Essentia that said, "Hey, your job's been postponed," to the time that I actually got the offer from the DIB was about 10 days. So I got moving and really cranking on LinkedIn, cold messaging a lot of people, looking on every search engine out there, and just really figuring out like where I can plug and play. Very fortunate to also land at the DIB, which was a eye-opening experience from going from like an Air Force like aircraft maintenance officer to doing tactical like sortie generation to working at the DIB at the Pentagon, where like we're doing very vague proposals for the Secretary of Defense from like improving psychological safety for the military as a whole. How do we scale AI to like beat China and compete? It very cool experience with some very brilliant minds. If you're not familiar with the Defense Innovation Board, it's still going. It was a federal advisory committee stood up under Ash Carter, and they're writing proposals for the Secretary of Defense. Neil deGrasse Tyson was on our board. I think he was the biggest name at the time when I was there, and several CEOs from other companies. Very cool experience.
Yeah, that's amazing. What a journey that got you there. Did you ever admit to anybody on the board that that's how you felt on the interview?
No, no, I planned to let that story die, but then I remembered it today as I was walking back in my steps. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. What did you do? You said you had to do a bunch of cold calls and reaching out and connecting. How did you do that? Because a lot of people on here are having to do that right now, kind of build their connection. Tell us more about that piece.
Yeah. So it was just that, and I was very nervous. It was not something I wanted to do. It's something that made me feel uncomfortable, and then also, not that I like kept tabs on everyone, but I felt like, hey, if this person didn't accept my request or like email me back, I like just felt completely rejected, and that's not how you're supposed to do it. I remember talking to a buddy he worked at Amazon at the time, and he was like, "That's exactly what LinkedIn is for. Do it." And one of the tips I would have left the group with later today as we hang up is like, it's really a game of like volume and consistency. And I tell people sometimes, I talk to veterans every week. Like I said, I try to reply to everyone and hop on a phone when able, is like volume and consistency. If you're really hunting a job market and you have some deadlines, and you're messaging 10 people a day, increase it to 100, increase it to 20, do something to like increase that day over day volume. But that's what I did. I mean, I was never at the point where I was messaging 100 people or a day, but it just depends on, it's the person, the luck and timing of the person that you message, not that any company or anything has it out against an individual. I would recommend obviously including a note in every message that you send, but yeah, that was
Okay.
that was what I did. Accenture, the same job for Accenture was, I was deployed and I was shooting out a bunch of messages because I knew a transition was probably coming, and the guy was like, "Hey, I can, refer you, help you get a foot in the door this way." So every job I've had has really come from LinkedIn, to include the Accenture offer, Defense Innovation Board, Deloitte came after that, and then Palantir.
Okay. What does a good message look like? At first, you were doing the here's my resume, please help me. What's a
Oh,
better option?
Oh man, that's a good. I would have to log on and see. I bet whatever I shot out last was probably still not a good option because it's been a few years. But yeah, I would like to circle back on that one and figure out what I would
Yeah.
say like now if I was currently in the job market. But I would also encourage people to like not overthink it, to make it personable.
Mm,
I have found too that if you can make it more about them instead of saying, like I mentioned, I was kind of like transactional and like didn't mean to be,
mhm,
but where I what I actually do tell people is make it more about the person that you're messaging, not that you're trying to like manipulate a situation, but you really want to say, hey, like the goal is to find out how they achieved what they did. So if you can
mhm,
make the message seem something like, hey, saw your LinkedIn profile, love what you achieved. Very impressive background, and like would love to, spend 10 minutes on the phone with you during a commute sometime or something and just see, hey, how did you get here? What did you do? I think it takes the verbiage off of saying, hey, I'm looking for a job referral. Can you
mhm.
talk to me and tell me how to get one?
Yeah.
Even though I assume a lot of people who are reaching out, that might be their end goal, it still would that's how I would frame that.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Please, someone shoot
Awesome.
that down if you think that's terrible advice too, though. I would be open for
I
that
don't think
feedback.
anybody would tell you that. Maybe message him personally if you think it's terrible
Yeah.
advice. Don't make fun of him in front of everybody. For somebody in here who might want to get into consulting, what do you think they should start working on right now? Maybe if they don't have any experience in it, where's it either a good starting place for them or some skills that they could gain now?
Okay. I mentioned when I first started, like I love like dispelling like popular beliefs that are out there. I
Hmm.
learned about consulting from like during my deployment. I had a buddy at KPMG and we just started going and talking, and I was like, this is the best kept secret ever. Like, why have I not heard about consulting? And then the closer I got to it, the more and when I actually did it, I worked at the DIB and then I worked at Deloitte. I just found like consulting was like this nonsense term that just means you do anything and everything like the client wants you to, right? Like they're consultants for everything. Um, they're different things that you'll see out there. I got feedback that you need a top MBA from top schools, you need a PMP, all the stuff. I've worked with around and seen everyone from all different walks of life. There was no cookie cutter approach to consulting. You've already been doing consulting every day you were in the military. So if you are prepping for consulting, it's something you want to get into, I would highly recommend the book called Case in Point, where it will walk you through some of those case interviews and help you just develop some frameworks for like what those look like. Case in Point's a great start. There's another book actually called I, I think it's called Cracked It. It just walks through other frameworks to get you ready for that case interview, and those will help. The biggest thing that you can do, though, whether it's a job in tech, it's a job in consulting, is your network. I think Kenny hit on this on the call right before me. Is like your network is your most powerful tool. I highly recommend you look at the backgrounds of people on there. I would challenge anyone to find like that one background that really makes it. When I was at Deloitte, um, had people that I would recommend that felt far more qualified than me, and just yeah, didn't make it for whatever reason. I think a lot of the interviews come down to controversial hot take by Dustin is, uh, did that person like you in that setting, in that time? And, would they want to work with you on their team, regardless
Yeah,
of like, hey, did this person just nail all these questions out of the park? I think that
100%.
tends to matter less. Oh, there's looks
Yeah.
like a lot of message. I saw AFSOC hoodie shout out. Yep. Started out at Hurlburt Field back in the day. We had some Palantir experience in here. Happy to talk about that.
Yeah, it looks like he actually has a question. He's raising his hand right now.
Oh,
Go
yeah,
ahead and
yeah.
ask.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, how are you? This is Jan. So I've had a recent experience with Palantir's hiring process. So I guess mid-November, I was approached by a recruiter, right, to for an FSR role, FSR Palantir role for Gotham and AIDP and all that stuff. I made it through a couple rounds of interviews, right, up to the second round. Everything was going great, but since my second interview, I haven't heard back at all. Like even my uh the staffing agency that was running my applications, Palantir hasn't like communicated with them at all until like recent when they said that I answered something saying that I wasn't qualified for the job. Like, why would I say that? First of all, like I know I'm qualified. And then after they said that, they told my recruiter they offered me the same job but at an alternate location. After they said that I wasn't qualified for that role in the location that I applied for, which is it was pretty confusing. I guess they're still working on that position for me. But it's confusing because I haven't received like a official, hey, you're not gonna get in the job email at all. Like I feel like I'm in limbo right now
Yeah.
with them. I have no idea like what to say or think or who to reach out to about this. It seems to be
Yeah.
a lot of miscommunication between Palantir, the staffing agency, and myself.
Yeah, and I'll also start by just sympathizing too. Is like there's no more frustrating place to be, I feel like, than like after you've committed, sent you finished that last or like an interview and you're waiting to hear back on next steps or you're waiting to hear back if like you get a job offer or not, right? That's like a very like I don't think the companies or the recruiters like always truly sympathize with like, oh hey, this person's like just waiting right now to hear back. They might have other offers out. They're probably losing sleep on how fast we get back to this person. So totally get it. I hate to hear that about the FSR position. In like what comes to mind, and this was something, I had referred someone to an FSR position a while back and found out when they saw that individual's resume, we were in a non-compete with like that company. So like there was like fell flat. There was nothing they could really do. And so what they could have done is actually refer that person to another project because each project is tied to like a different FSR, a different role, even if they're at the same location. I really, without having the additional context or speaking to the team, I don't know what exactly went wrong there, but totally can relate and would encourage you to keep applying to the FSR roles and then also like to the actual company too, if there's roles out there that you see you're interested in. And happy to talk offline too regarding that if I can help at
Yeah,
all.
I'll send you a connect request on
Yeah.
LinkedIn. Maybe we can talk about it later if that's okay with you.
Yeah, yeah. And I would say,
Thank you.
and if if people are messaging people at Palantir, I will say, your Palantirs, your Anduril's, a lot of those defense tech companies, I mentioned it was a game of like volume and consistency. So if you're emailing some of these people and you're not getting like any reply, any connection acceptance, I think our company for sure, but some of the other ones probably put out guidance to the employees is like, hey, you're not allowed to refer anyone to, that you meet on LinkedIn. Be very cautious of like who you talk to, things like that, because it is a way that like adversaries do exploit the hiring process at these kinds of, they are targeted for those reasons. So don't be discouraged. Message 20 more people and you'll get someone like me to pick up the phone and talk about it and give you some advice.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for asking the question, Jan. Talking about Palantir, you are now a deployment strategist. What is that? What do you do?
Okay. If this is being recorded, so I'm going to keep it like not like because I can't call it a technology consultant, right? Like that's not how we view it. That's not how the company views it. If I had to boil down like the deployment strategist to like a very basic level, is we help translate some of like the user requirements, like descope, really understand what the user needs, and then
Hmm.
goes back to our engineers to make sure they understand what it is. Unlike consulting, which sometimes you'll hear like, oh, like use these frameworks and so forth. Like a lot of times when working with the government, and what I found in like federal consulting too, is like there's not a framework that just fits all things, right? Like you really some of the knowledge that's out there is institutional knowledge that lives with those um, master sergeants that lives with those colonels and so forth. Like you really have to go out there and talk to them and figure out what the root of their problem is. On the software side, we would go out, find out what the root of those problems are, and then come back and help, decomp that with our engineers and figure out, can we build, tailor, modify one of our solutions that we have to be what that end user needs.
Okay. What is your guys' environment like at Palantir? Like, do you have a good working environment?
Yeah, I would say the setup is pretty incredible. It's anything, you can envision from like that defense, that tech space when I used to think of Google, we have some pool tables, we have some ping pong tables. It's bring your dog to work every day type office. People have scooters in there. You get fed 3 times a day, like breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You have a speakeasy. You have a unlimited Red Bull, cold brew coffee, espresso, all those things to keep you working all the
Wow,
time.
that's awesome. Sounds like
It's
a
a
great
pretty
time,
the
honestly.
office the culture and office setup is pretty cool. I love it.
That's That's super cool. For our last little bit, I'd like to ask a little more veteran-centered questions since you work so closely with veterans a lot. What's one of the biggest mistakes that you see veterans making in the job hunt or in their transition?
Can I say like stopping a little short, like not fully casting that the big net to figure out what all they can do. I think people are often discouraged by some of the tips, and then this, applied to me too when I was
Hmm.
transitioning, is being told, hey, you need to have an MBA if you want to go into consulting. You need to have your PMP to do this, and so forth. I think that people will stop and kind of settle at the first job they have. I would encourage you to normally, push back on that first job offer you get. I was not that way when I got my first. I would have taken anything, but um, it things are moving at a slower pace than you probably think, and I think you can take a breath, you know, evaluate the offer, see if it's a good one. Get competing offers. If you're doing a skill bridge at one place, I would not encourage you to just go put all of your eggs in one basket. I would continue shopping around, leveraging your network and seeing what else is out there. And at the very end of the day, where everything lines up, you have the best location, the best pay, like total compensation, and then the actual role. Wherever that triangle lines up the most is like what I would encourage people to consider.
Okay. What about those people who might not have an option? Like we have some where they have families and picking the first job offer might be the smartest, idealist thing for them to do. Where should they go from there?
I would take the job. I take the job offer. Realize that like you don't owe anyone anything. Like I think loyalty, and this is
Mm,
something that I struggle with, is feeling loyal to certain people or companies, and I would consider that at the end of the day they're building a company, which means just like the military, you're designed to be replaceable. So take it, do what's best for you and your family. But I would continue shopping around. I would communicate the needs to your immediate supervisor too. Like if growth is something you're interested in, I would make sure that they know, because maybe within that job there's roles out there that you haven't considered or weren't privy to, where you can climb that ladder and take on more responsibility for that to fit the needs of what you're looking for.
yeah, yeah, that's awesome. I wanted to ask about you also invest in real estate and small businesses. We have a few veterans in here who are interested in that. What do you have any advice for getting into that?
Yeah. So there's a war room mastermind out there. It's called the War Room Mastermind, led by Dave Perret. Also wrote I think the book is called Military Millionaire. But super great group of guys out there. If you're interested in being surrounded by other veterans who are also investing in the real estate space, that's where I started out. They were really awesome group of guys, and some of them are active duty who are just doing really well in the space. I got into, did a few flips here and there while I was working at Deloitte. Got into the multifamily space. So I have a 15 unit in Arkansas, and then some cabins up in West Virginia. Um,
Mhm.
Always plan to like get into the multifamily space and continue to scale. For me, I was going to do that with business partners, is what I needed to help leverage and bring in capital and other expertise that I didn't have. The real estate front is, moving kind of slow right now. I still have those properties, but I've been fascinated with all of. I think this has really taken off over the last few years. But if you're following Cody Sanchez or Brian Lubin from the Action Academy. Oh, they're Hormozy. There's a ton of them out there that are really just talking small business entrepreneurship. So there was a while where I was like really interviewing a lot of small business owners, seeing, what they have for sale, whether that's like the trades or that's a flooring company, HVAC, you name it, everything is for sale all the time. I didn't end up I didn't end up buying a small business, but still remained fascinated with it. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's something I do in the next few years. But I think partnerships and finding people you can trust will really be an important one. So haven't bit down on that yet, but still stay fascinated with it.
Okay, awesome. Well, I just have one more question. We have time for a couple questions after mine. If you guys have one, raise your hand. I wanted to ask, what is the biggest mindset shift that you made after the military that made a difference?
The biggest payoff was those one-off LinkedIn requests that I shot out, right? That someone actually answered, and me being scared initially to do that and being worried, oh, this person's gonna reject me or I wasn't qualified for this. Um, the biggest mindset shift, and it's funny, is because that didn't leave me during transition. Even when I came over to Palantir, I remember just like looking at the room and being amazed at all the talent that was in there, and just couldn't
Mhm.
help but feel this really big like imposter syndrome of like, these guys are going to fire me in the first month when they find out like I do not deserve to be here. And so I would say that you do deserve to be there, that you have to find a way to hide those feelings in a box somewhere, challenge all of your assumptions. I, I still get that. It's something that I continue to struggle with. What was really cool was when we went around the room at the Palantir like onboarding, um, every single person there, like within our small group, said they didn't feel like they deserved to be there. Like all of
Mhm.
them. It was like across the board, and we were all like, "What? Like no, like this guy's so impressive. This guy did
Mhm.
X, Y, Z, or girl did this." It's very cool. So if that's something you struggle with, please like know you're not alone and don't listen to that.
Yeah, I can 100% relate to that. Monique, go ahead.
Hi, Dustin.
Hey,
Speaking, you made some good points about that, like not feeling like you deserve to be there. And I, um, I kind of follow, I've not follow, but I've been looking at videos about Alex Karp, the CEO. And what I find interesting is that he created in Palantir a neurodivergent fellowship for people who kind of like, I don't want to say misspeak, but that or have ADHD, but that
okay.
I think that it's nice that he kind of he has a pathway to the company that considers people who might otherwise maybe have some type of neural. And so I
Yeah.
guess I don't really have a question or whatever, but well, actually, I'm looking at the website, looking at the positions. A lot of positions are in New York and Washington,
Yeah.
D.C. Um, uh, from your 4 years working there, has even though those are in those locations, are there what percentage of positions do you think might be like remote positions? Because
Yeah. So
I'm down here in Florida, so that's why I asked.
yeah. Um, valid. So New York, DC, and Denver, we have an office out in California too. Those are like our hubs, right? And the deployment strategist role, like where I'm at, is you want to be by the hubs, especially if like you're on the government side, because you need to access like a skiff. And um, I actually went remote though. I spent 2 years in Phoenix after I joined the company for my wife's work. We went out to Phoenix for a little while, worked remote, traveled a lot. It's not unheard of, but I will say like there are certain positions that I think you can do remote at the company, that you can do well at the company, but for the most part, like you do really want to be by those hubs, for if you're looking to grow in the company and stay up to date, I guess, on the latest. I think it's hard to stay on the federal side. The commercial space may have a lot more remote positions. I do not know off the top of my head like what those would look like if that's like a business ops analyst or something like that, but they exist. They're just, I think the company as a whole is, I'm not going to speak for the company and say they're like shifting away from some of the remote work. I just know some positions are a lot harder to get remote than others. On the note of Alex Karp, he wrote the book a while back. It just released this year, but it was the Technological Republic. If you're looking at a job in the software space, I highly recommend you pick it up. Um,
Okay.
Technological Republic came out. The on the note of him too is like he's an incredible character. The entire company rallies behind this guy, and so I mentioned when I opened up, I was like, hey, only believe like half of what you read because there's a lot of conspiracy stuff out there about Palantir too. But like
Mhm.
they stand on those values as like we were built to support the West and our allies. We do incredible work for the government and for the commercial sector, and yeah, there's no other place like I'd rather be right now. Uh, During my onboarding, the other thing that we just really uncovered is everyone was so rooted by the impact of what the software generated, what Palantir is really doing. So
That's great. Because I also read that the organization has a flat structure. So the
yeah,
hierarchy, do you have anyone that you report to, or does everyone
yeah,
pretty much they have autonomy and they can pretty much make their own decisions?
yeah. The flat structure is like the terrifying part, right? Because at Deloitte, right, it was just like the military. Like I knew who reported to me. I knew who I reported to. I even knew exactly what I needed to do to make manager and so forth. Like I had my career path kind of like carved out, and I knew what that was. At Palantir, oh, it's not. Like there's nothing more confusing than navigating a career where like you can have someone come up and be what we would consider a manager and then go back down to like an individual contributor and it have no impact on their career trajectory. So it's flat in the fact that my boss and my boss's boss were all called deployment strategists, right? Like
Okay.
hard to who when you first start you're like who's who, how do I navigate this. You get some clarity after being here for a little while, and like in your internal team you do have managers and you have enterprise leads as well that manage that as a whole, but it is I think it was confusing for me, coming from a hierarchy like my entire background. And if you're a new transition member, it would be for you too. But it's not hard to grasp. It's pretty flat. But I think there are pros and cons to each structure, and it works great for Palantir.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
great
bet.
questions, Monique. Well, thank you so much for coming on today, Dustin. I really appreciate it. It was a really insightful conversation. I hope it was good for everybody else too, and thanks for taking the time.
Hey, yeah, absolutely. I'm on LinkedIn if anyone has any questions or wants to tag up otherwise. But please, thanks for having me, guys, and happy to come back anytime.
Yeah.